Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to do roll call. And Councillor Gaba?
Here.
Councillor Pomeroy?
Here.
Councillor Watson?
Here.
Councillor Macri? I'm here, and that's it.
Oh, nope.
Okay.
Councillor Deacon did let us know that he wouldn't be here tonight.
Yes. And so that's 4. That gives us a declaration of a quorum, or if I'm supposed to declare that. First item is business is the MSAD 6 budget presentation.
Good evening. I'm Clay Gleason, Superintendent of Bonnie Eagle School System. I'm proud to be here tonight and glad to talk to you a little bit about our budget. I have with me Dawn Pooler, our business manager, and though she said it was fine if I just did all the talking, I will kind of insist that she get up here when some of the hard stuff comes up, or if you ask anything too challenging, I will definitely pass the baton to her. Also, we have one of our Standish representatives, John Sargent is here to observe, and Nathan Carlo, the chair of the board, is here to support also. Just as a kind of an overview, we, in this budget, there are packets that I'm referencing for the folks at home, and we can make these available to anyone who wants one. We can leave some extra copies here, so if members of the public that are maybe watching this later want to look at them. And we also have a lot of information on our website, so all of this can be found. We've really, this year, Dawn and I have really tried to make sure everything's open and accessible to people, and anything that people want to see, we will show them. We have nothing to hold back on or to hide. And we're actually pretty proud of the efforts we've made to kind of not lose any services for our kids and try to bring in the most responsible budget we can. So the overall numbers I'll just throw out there is our overall total operating budget is going up about 6.38%. That includes all aspects of the budget from last year to this year. And what you'll find if we dig into this is that it's largely salaries. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. For the way that breaks down for towns is very different, and some of you, especially those of you involved in town government, know this very well, but we don't get to decide as a school department how to divvy the bill up amongst the towns. The state tells us, and it's based on valuation that is often a couple of years in arrears, and it's an average, so it's hard to predict when it's going to hit different towns. And right now, Standish isn't in a bad spot as far as compared to the other towns. The increase for Standish is 5.51% for the town. And you'll see if you look at the table in that packet that some of the other towns are higher than that, because that's, of course, less than the overall budget increase. Other towns are being hit with a higher amount, and that is 100% really based on the valuations and the way the state determines towns' ability to pay. So that's something I want to say up front. But in this budget, something that was very important to us was to not add anything. We realized that we're in a time when times are hard for people. So we added one position. There's one addition, and that is for an additional teacher to teach English to speakers of other languages, sometimes called TESOL or ELL. We have seen a pretty significant increase, not as much as other communities, but I think it was as little as last year. We had about 14 or 15 students that needed services, and we have one teacher for our entire district, 8 buildings. And now we have like 30 students that need services, and one human being cannot be in 8 places enough to provide an adequate level of services. So we are showing that as an addition to the budget, and it's an area where we have unusual growth in a population of students. So that's the one addition to the budget. Other than that, it is status quo largely. We have converted some resources, like maybe we didn't need a math teacher, but we're using that math teacher to accomplish something else, to offer kids at the high school. There are things like that we've done. And largely maintaining our current level of programming or being creative to use our existing resources to offer new programming, but not adding to the overall cost of the budget. The biggest increase, as I mentioned, is salary increases for our staff. I know towns are facing this, all employers are facing this, and the school district is no different. We're in a little bit of a labor crisis, maybe more than a little bit of a labor crisis, and if we start looking around at surrounding school systems to compare job-alike roles, we had fallen woefully behind in almost every area. We made a big correction last year with bus drivers. There was a negotiation year, and we finally were able to negotiate, and I believe our salary for bus drivers matched anyone in the area at the time. Now, of course, that changes pretty quick, but as of last year, I think we were pretty much level with Gorham, which was one of the highest paying for bus drivers in the area. Most of our other positions, though, we were not competitive. People were literally making thousands of dollars more if they were salaried and dollars an hour more if they were hourly to do the same job in another school system. That's just a drive in either direction, any direction. So we needed to put our money where our mouth was, and that's something Don and I had said all through the budget process, is this needed to be the year we paid our people. We had 3 bargaining units that we're negotiating with the board. The board was very supportive of the need to keep these people, because if we don't have people, we don't have schools to operate for our kids. So some of the trade-offs we made in this budget is we didn't add things. We typically have allocated up to $1 million or $1.5 million on facilities improvements. We didn't put that in this budget, because if we had done that, that increase would have been significantly more. And there is no way we were going to bring a budget that was close to double-digit increase, right? Even the 6.38 was higher than we would have liked, but we just couldn't. We couldn't find a way to squeeze any more out of it, really, without starting to impact the program we offer. And 57% of our employees actually live in the district, which is an interesting note. So these tax increases impact the people who work for us and are paid by us. So there's a little bit of a symbiosis to that, too. And I realize there's 43% who don't work for us, and there's a lot of people who live in the community who don't work for the school. But we try to balance all those things out. So a couple things I wanted to mention. You know, you have heard in the past, and I might have mentioned it last year, and I'll mention it again, that we are in the middle of assessing our facilities. Our Standish schools specifically, our elementary schools, we need to look at what we can do to improve those schools. And this year we convened, we had I'm trying to find it here, a facilities assessment done, and that looked at all the things that need to be done in all our buildings, code issues, safety issues, physical plant issues, and we took that information, we contracted with an architectural firm to go through and do a pretty significant review of all those facilities to help us come up with some options if we get to the place where we're ready to do a plan. Nothing binding, nothing that had to go out to vote. We tried to involve the community in that conversation, but what came out of that was a concept that was pretty well supported, that if we try to go school by school, like what we did in Buxton I think it's 14 years ago now. The new school in Buxton is 14 years old. If we try to go school by school and do these major renovations, it's going to take us 80 to 100 years to replace all of our schools and bring them up to the conditions they should be in, and we can't afford that, and we don't have that amount of time. So one of the concepts that emerged out of this process was something that I have kind of named the One Bonnie Eagle concept, which initially it started as a new school in Standish, but then the kids in Leamington and Hollis also have schools that are falling apart around them, and our high school is not the best. Our people do a great job to take care of what we have, and in some ways that has actually hindered us, because in some places their buildings are falling apart around them, and we've tried to make do with what we have. So part of that plan, which I won't get too much into detail, but I'm happy to talk to you. Call me up and I'll come have coffee with you and we'll talk about it. But is to look at some kind of consolidation, significant consolidation on one site, and consolidate all our services. And there would be a significant cost with that. But what we're hoping is that there would be some funding from the state, because what we are going to do is the major capital school construction program, I wanted to get that right, is opened. And applications are due by August, and our plan is to submit applications for every building in our district except Buxton. And what we really need is, if one of our schools finishes high enough on that list, if we have one solution to our problem, which is if Steep Falls happened to be that building, or Edna Libby was that building, if the solution is to renovate the whole district, basically, we're hearing that that's often seen as a pretty favorable project, because the more consolidation you can do, the more you can consolidate your services, the less roofs you have, the less buses are driving around. Those are often seen as more favorable projects. So At least that's what the architects are telling us. So this is something we're really trying to at least see if it's a possibility, right? So in this budget, what you won't find is a lot of money for the facilities, because we didn't think it was advisable to take even $1 million or $2 million and improve bathrooms or improve egress if we don't know if those schools are going to stay open or not. So 1 more year from now, we'll have a better idea. We should know by next year at this time if we've finished high enough to even have a chance to have funding support. And if we don't, then we have to kind of go back to the drawing board and look at what would be next. So the Budget Advisory Committee is a group that we have convened to kind of advise us as we build this budget, and there was a lot of interest in still allocating some funds for facilities improvements, but at the end of the day, it just didn't seem responsible, so they accepted the recommendation to not. And if we had some urgent need, we do have a capital improvement fund where funds go from previous years that are unspent in those articles, and it's grown to a pretty significant amount. So if we had an emergent situation, we have some money available that the board could approve to replace a boiler or fix a roof or something. So I feel pretty comfortable that we could get a year down the road without adding that additional cost. But we do have aging buildings. So that is really our next big issue to tackle. We're getting our salaries, hopefully. All the contracts haven't been approved, but we're getting close. So these numbers are, I think, are for salaries are where we're going to land. Another big hit, and I think, again, municipals, governments have seen this too, the health insurance increases were significant. And one of the things that Dawn and I, with the council, the board, we haven't even had the board re-vote on the budget, which we actually need to do because we haven't had a meeting, but our health increases came in at literally almost as high as they could be. I think the most they estimated was 11.5%, and the district's increase was 11.25%. And we had conservatively budgeted in the middle at 6%. So that was a big chunk of money that we had to figure out what to do with. And so we made the decision to recommend, because it's ultimately the board's decision, but Dawn and I recommended that we pull that from our fund balance, so that didn't go on to the taxpayer. We have a healthy fund balance, but as you know, if you overspend your fund balance, you could get yourself in trouble in the future. So we're going to take the approach to add from that fund balance to keep the tax implications the same as what the board voted on, and then just be as responsible as we can when it comes to filling positions or other expenses throughout the year, and hopefully replenish that as the year goes on. So talked about wages. So those are the high points. I don't know if you have particular questions or things you want to hear about. I'm happy to answer any questions. Dawn, is there anything else you wanted to?
You stole my thunder.
I'm sorry, Dawn.
Any questions?
I've got one question.
Yeah.
When was this given to the town of Standish? Because I didn't get it in my mailbox. I checked it today. I got it here tonight. And it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I understand.
To get this at 5 minutes to 6, and you're talking, and I'm trying to go through this 6 pages of numbers spinning around my head. And I'm kind of amazed that the council didn't have this packet for a few days, because I would have really liked to gone over this some. So did this just get delivered today, or?
I think we probably walked in with it tonight, yes.
Yeah, and that's not acceptable to me as a town councilor, to be honest with you, because I really, obviously, have some questions. I can go over a few with you right now. On page 3, I've got a number at the very bottom that says 63,315,8387. Which number's not supposed to be in there? There's too many numbers.
Yep.
So which number comes out of there? Is it the 3,000? Where's the number we're supposed to be seeing tonight?
First 6 comes out.
That's what I'm wondering.
That would,
That's what
I
I would
wish
like it
that
to.
was the case.
I would
but
say one of the first 3 numbers should come out, but you have too many numbers, so I can't, it's hard for me to.
Yep.
I'm sure you're going to say it's the dollar one that's got to come out, not the $100,000.
I'm sorry, the last 3 numbers should be 837. I'm sorry.
Knew that.
The last 3 numbers,
On page 5, you'll see it's the same numbers listed again.
63,315,838.
38. All right, I guess, like I said, I'm just trying to read this in 5 minutes, and I'm not an accountant, but I'm pretty good. It looks like since 2021, this budget's gone up 23%. Would that be a correct number?
That looks like the right trend, and I think if you look to the chart to the right on that same page, page 3, it's broken down into three parts, that bar. There's salary, benefits, and other. So everything else that's not salary and benefits.
Right.
And if that's the same column that's other in that chart you're looking at, and those numbers, you can see that the number for fiscal year 25 is less than fiscal year 15. So those increases are almost 100%, I think literally are 100% salary and benefits.
You gotta understand, let me get this on. 6% of 46,000 versus 6% of 63,000, those are big numbers. I mean,
Yep.
you're saying, oh, it's only 6% back there, but 6% of 60 million versus 66% of 48 million. That's what I'm getting at. So I'm kind of, like I said, trying to read this in 5 minutes. I'm not happy with trying to go through this, but I'll go a couple more pages. Total budget, I guess, on page 5 is up 3.968 million this year. Is that correct?
Yep.
So, what's that now?
Yeah, that would be the increase
63
from
cents.
24 to 25, the three.
Glad you put that 63 cents in there. That kind of,
Yep.
but anyways,
Decision.
there again, you know, a $4 million in 1 year. And then I guess we slide over to page 6 is what bothers me a little bit if I'm reading this right. There again, I'm trying to read this in 5 minutes and trying to present something. On the bottom of the page, does it say that Standish's mill rate per 100,000 evaluation will go up $51.05 this year? Bottom number on the page says Standish mill rate 13.8, difference is 51.07. That's for a $100,000 house. Is that correct?
That is what it says. Do you-
Is that correct?
Yes.
So most houses in Standish are $400,000 homes, basically. So we're looking at a $204 increase this year alone. If we did that for the next 10 years, that's over $2,000 increase in 10 years. I'm just saying, with senior housing and senior people and fixed incomes, when you're looking at increase in 1 year, $204, and then you multiply that out of 10, well, the last 5 years, it's roughly been that. And if you keep bumping that, you know, we're gonna be over $2,000 just in the school budget in a 5-year or 6-year plan more. So that was one I was questioning, because like I said, I'm just trying to sort through it, you know. If I had got this a little earlier, I would have been a lot more prepared, but, you know, you prepared this in 5 months, and I'm trying to sift through it in 7 minutes. I think I got here at 7 minutes to 6. I guess that's all I'm concerned with. I know the school budget, I've always said I'd like to have you present the school budget to the townspeople to vote on, and not include it in our town budget, because at 73%, you'd probably have a lot more people showing up at your meetings, because everybody blames the town council or the town manager. Oh, we're up, mill rate's going up, but they don't ever factor in. Most people don't understand that, is it 73% of our budget for the year goes to the school. So I always said we ought to send out 2 tax bills, and then there would be a lot of people coming to town, to your meetings, and being upset and not seeing me on the street going, my taxes just went up $204 this year. How come, you know? So I guess that's it for me. Like I said, if I'd had more time with this, I'm sure I would have had a lot more questions, but I think my questions are pretty spot on. Thank you.
So for a concerned citizen that is worried about the tax increases, what opportunities are given to them to provide feedback? What chances can they be a part of the system to come up with this budget?
Each year, and something that I don't think most school districts do, we operate a budget advisory committee that we form in the fall. We start trying to publish it and get membership as early as October. The meetings usually start at the end of November, and we meet several times a month, and we seek participation from all the towns. And these are just people, citizens. We actually ask for town representation, town officials. We invite town officials to be part of that. You know, sometimes there's conflicts with the nights we meet. Sometimes we just don't get people. average citizens, we've had usually a pretty good representation when the appointments are made. The Finance and Facilities Committee appoints people that apply, and if we have too many, then we have to make some choices, but they try to make sure they evenly represent the different towns. So that's probably the single biggest thing a citizen can do, is to be part of that process. We offer presentations. We will meet with anyone who wants to come in and talk to us to hear more about how salaries are driving this budget. It is 100% salaries that are driving this budget. And when people want to know where would you cut to not have this increase, it would be people. And the cutting the people would affect the services our kids have. And if that's what people are comfortable with, then that we'll listen to that. But that's not what we were comfortable presenting, because we have students that we're accountable to. And I understand there's always that competition of the folks who don't have kids in school versus the folks who do, and I don't know how to resolve that, because that's just how our system is set up.
Well, they all were in school at one time, I always tell them, so someone paid their way, even though it was 50
That's a great
years
point.
ago.
It's a great
or
point.
60 years ago, somebody paid for them to go to
Yep,
school.
it's
So
paying it forward.
You can't
Yep.
roll that ball down the hill a whole lot.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I mean, I will just comment on, what I've seen over the past few years of the budget process for the school district, is that I did go last year. I didn't go, unfortunately, this year. But, there are public meetings where the public can even vote with the budget, with the BAC to push things forward. So as part of that process, it is quite open, and I think the public almost has more input throughout that than, frankly, the town budget.
I would agree.
And feel free to send folks that have questions to us directly, because we would be glad to meet with people, talk to people, to help show them what we're working with and what we're doing.
I just got one more, but you want to go, Brandon?
I just had a question in regards to the budget here. What's the enrollment level at?
Yep, so I can tell you for sure on the 279, the form that we have to base all of this on, from last year to this year at the beginning of the year, or wherever they measure, October, I think it's the October 1 count, we were 8 students different. I think we had 8 students less this year than last year. So in a district of 3,300 kids, I would say that's fairly level. No big upswing and no big downswing. And we have an enrollment study that was done as part of our facilities process, and generally that is the anticipated sort of trajectory, is fairly flat, maybe a gentle decline over the next 10 years, but nothing super substantial. And I've had a lot of people say, well, what about all the new construction? What about the new construction? What about the bunch of units going out in this road? And what I see happening, and what I think is happening, because this has happened to my family, is that we have a lot of families whose kids are aging out, they're graduating, but the families are staying in their house because they can't afford to move and go anywhere else. So that new housing is new families coming in, but it's a replacement. It's not on top of, right? So I think that's partly why our enrollments are staying fairly flat. We're not seeing these huge surges of families and kids. It's just replacing the ones we're losing through graduation. Our average class size is settling in the low 200s to 30-ish for a class. There's a couple spikes to that, but for the most part, when you look at like a senior class 10 years from now, it's going to be around 235 kids, and that's kind of what we're averaging.
Another concern of mine is through our budget process, right up until a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we had no input from SAD6. So I don't know how many times this council and budget committee said, well, we don't know what the school budget is going to be, and we got no indication at all. So when we're trying to figure out if we're going to take money out of general fund, or if we're going to move money around, or maybe not buy a plow truck, you know how tough it is to know that you're going to come in now at $4 million. I don't know what it is for Standish, 600,000 or 700,000, and I don't know where it gets off track, but it would be nice in the future if we could have a number before we went into budget process ourselves, so that we could sit here and look at a mill rate number and be real, because Scott, you can't figure mill rate without this, I'm assuming, right? Can't even begin to.
No, I used last year's.
Last year's,
Same
and
number.
you're hoping it's close, But some years I see it was 1%, and then it was 9%, so we never know. So that would be something as a counselor I would hope we could look at down the road as to why we can't get this budget prepared before, our town, or at least give us an indication so we can work with it in our end instead of coming up with a knee-jerk reaction down the road.
And I appreciate that, and that's noted. I would just say that could be a two-way conversation, right? Like, that's something that I had met with Tosh, I think, last year maybe, and the intention was to stay more connected. Other things come up, didn't happen, right? This is Dawn's first year in this role as business manager. I'm sure she's taking notes on that, and we'll adjust moving forward. But I'd also say, at any time, if anybody here, whether it's Scott or anyone, has any questions, hey, we're working on our budget, could you give us, we would be more than happy to work with you on that. It is definitely not something we're intentionally doing to be siloed. So noted, and that's something we can look to improve next year.
Do you guys have guidelines of when you have to have your budget prepared and
Yeah, basically we have to work backwards from having the warrant prepared for the vote and all of that.
yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
mean, we're in a similar, so it's sort of hard to say you go first, then we'll go next, or
Yeah,
vice versa.
but it's something we could definitely do better to work together on, and even preliminarily, like if we don't have final numbers, because ultimately the board has to make the final vote on the final budget, but as we have the superintendent's budget and through that budget advisory process, and that's why actually it would be super helpful if somebody from the council was willing to sit in on those meetings, because then they're right there from, jump one of the development process to see all of this and could bring that back. And we would actually love that if there was somebody who could come to those.
I don't think the town council has ever tried to micromanage your school system, because that's why we hire school board members. And they do, like Todd Delaney did report back to us a couple times, but was careful putting numbers there, But I understand that, but I sure am not gonna go over there a whole lot when I elect a school board to do their job and a budget advisory committee to do their job. As you never come to a council meeting. I don't know if I've ever seen you in chambers other than.
Only these meetings, really.
Yes.
Yep.
So, I mean, you don't come here to try to see what we're doing, and we really leave it up to our school board members and our advisory committees to bring the best package forward to us, which, trust me, they have. I really appreciate the work that they do.
Clay, I'm gonna send you a quarterly coffee update, so we can, we'll chat.
Okay.
I wanted to echo Sarah, though, I was invited, and I had attended 2 of those meetings, and they were informative, so I think, it's a two-way street that we could be involved. I just wanted to say personally, I had 6 kids go through the district. One was salutatorian, one had an IEP, so I think kudos, they do a terrific job, and my daughter is teaching at the middle school now, so I see secondhand, or firsthand, how tough it is for the teachers. And I think the fact you have union, there's only so much you can do with, and I see what my daughter makes and all the time she puts in at home, and so they deserve even more than that. So I say, kudos, it's a tough job. So thank you all for coming too.
Appreciate that.
I'd just like to unpack for the public watching a little bit about the, about that increase being, really staff salaries. How many staff do you have on at this point?
Yeah, our total employee count is 700 plus, I don't know, 750, 740, depending on the day. And that's everybody. That's custodians, food service, maintenance workers, teachers, administrators, secretaries. That's all the people that work for us, and all the people that assemble on that football field on the first opening of school. So yeah, 750 people, and like I said, more than half of them work and live in the communities.
And are the increases that are going, because you have unions, they're
Yep.
probably different for, depending on the position?
Yep.
It's not a flat increase for each employee?
Right. No, and this year where we had to bargain with, so we have some folks, not a lot, but that are non-bargaining. We have salary scales that we set, and there's a few dozen people that are not part of bargaining units, but the majority are part of 3 associations. There's either the teachers union or the support staff association, which is bus drivers and custodians and maintenance and food service. And then there's the instructional support staff, which are ed techs and secretaries, basically in LPNs, any health person that's less than a nurse. So those are the 3 big, and we had to negotiate with all of them this year. They were all up, their contracts were all up. So one of the things we tried to do is have one of those groups be on a 2-year contract moving forward, so they're not all gonna be up again in 3 years. We tried to be proactive. And so even within that, let's say if a number was 10% right? Because we had to make a big correction this year. We were that far off surrounding areas. We were not going to hire people. We had trouble this year hiring people to fill our positions. So that 10%, you're right, is not applied exactly 10% to every person in that grid who works for us. It varies. But that was the kind of number we were talking about. And that doesn't even put us, let's say, for the Teachers Association. Let's say we had a 10% increase. We're still less than almost everybody around us significantly.
What's the current status with vacancies?
Yep, we have a handful of positions that we went all year and struggled to fill. One of the things that became an issue is foreign language became a really hard position to fill. We used to have French at the middle school and at the high school. And first we had a French teacher leave the middle school and could not hire a French teacher, could not find a certified French teacher. So that position got converted into something else because we needed kids to have allied arts, exploratory, elective classes outside of their core content, and we couldn't fill it with French. So that turned into more of a career exploration class. And the high school had a French teacher leave, and we could not, once again, find a certified French teacher. So people are like, why'd you get rid of French? We did not intentionally get rid of French, I assure you. We had to advertise for world language and look for the most qualified candidate. So those were two that were hard to fill. We had a science teacher resign in the middle of the year, which, by the way, I've been doing this for 29 years. That almost used to never happen, and it happens more and more now. People leave and take jobs in other places in the middle of the year. We could not get a certified science teacher to replace that teacher. Gifted and talented, we have elementary students who are identified for gifted and talented that we have not been able to hire all year an elementary gifted and talented teacher. Special education, I think goes without saying, continues to be one of the biggest positions to fill, and we've had a couple positions that we've had to be creative to either elevate people who weren't fully certified and help work with them to get certified, or in a couple cases they have gone unfilled and we'd have to redistribute caseloads.
And do you find that many of the vacancies that you have are premeditated for them folks looking for higher paying jobs?
It is a mix. I don't think it's as simple as people always jumping for money, because I think generally people are looking for reasons to stay that are outside of money, but when that difference is $14,000 to go to Westbrook, I don't know if I have $14,000 worth of reasons to keep somebody here if they want to leave, right?
Is that the number that you're seeing?
That is a number. I know there were people who went to Scarborough and Westbrook who were mid-career people who made $14,000 more to go do the same job in Scarborough and Westbrook. So that's what we were faced with, and we did not even come close to closing that gap, but we at least can say that we're competitive with Massabesic now, right, which we weren't. So some people are leaving for money. Those are usually more early career people. It's the later career people who are invested here, who have families here, who don't want to leave. So what we hope is that by having these large salary increases, yes, it's impacting taxpayers. We recognize that. But we'll be able to at least keep the people we have and kind of stop the hemorrhaging of people walking out the door. And it's not just teachers, because it was bus drivers until we corrected bus driver pay, and then we've stabilized. We've had to cancel, I'm going to knock on wood, the transportation director's not going to like me saying this, we've canceled far fewer bus runs this year than we did last year. Last year it was a weekly occurrence, and this year it's been more rare. So that actually did accomplish something. Ed techs, we struggled to find ed techs to support students with IEPs in the classroom, and I would say that's an area where we probably had any given day 5 to 10 unfilled ed tech positions in the district that we need, but we could not fill them because we couldn't get qualified people. And so that contract has been approved, and there were significant increases for that population of staff members, and we're already seeing like more people interested in the postings that we have because we're competitive now.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter if you're public or private sector. I don't care if you're a welder, you're a truck driver, you're a grocery aid worker. You're all struggling to find help. We're all trying to dig out of the same pool. I think we went up 26% in wages and still couldn't find anybody in one of our companies. But it's not something that's going to get solved by, if you put $10 more in, Gorham's going to put 12 in next year. Same with Fire EMS and Standish. We go up, the towns around us double up on us, So It's not gonna go away soon, and it's not just a sad six problem. I hope I'm sure you.
Absolutely, I do, and we do have regional conversations with superintendents, and I have an unusual spot to be in York County and Cumberland, so I meet with both groups, and it's a problem, but different in the two counties. It's just, one of the conversations that we started to have with York County is there's some benefit to having regional, regional pay sort of agreements, right, to kind of coordinate, but then you're not really bargaining in good faith, so there has to be more to that. I'm sure that was someone's intention of the legislature with the minimum pay law, but that's going to have an impact too. That recently passed, and I assume you might be following that, but it's to set a minimum pay for ed techs and school support staff, right? And the original proposal would have, I know this is hard, but it would have been a lot worse if we would have had to literally have cut people if that had passed in its original form. But with the adjustments and with the increases we made, we should be in pretty good shape to not have that cause us to have a big impact in the future. But I think the intention there, right, is to level the playing field for schools. But you're right, it crosses professions. It doesn't matter what you do,
I mean,
right?
a small business in Maine, we can go out of business and walk away. You can't go out of business.
Right,
I mean,
right, and
so you're in a different scenario than we are a little bit.
Right.
I can't close my doors and give up, you can't.
And if you make a product, you can't charge more for the product, right? We get who walks in the door, we got to educate them. And one thing I will say that we're doing, we're going through a schedule change at the high school. The high school has been on trimesters, so three ranking periods. And we're one of the few school districts that still do that, so we're going to go back to a semester-based schedule next year, and a lot of work has been put into that. And we feel that once we get into that semester schedule, there may be some savings, like some positions that maybe we can start to, if someone retires or leaves, that maybe we don't need quite so many math teachers, English teachers, science teachers. And so maybe next year when we're standing here, that increase is a little more level because we don't have the need for as many people. But this year it would have been irresponsible to make that adjustment without knowing that, so.
Cool. I'm good.
I think all my questions have been asked except for one, and this is just getting into the numbers on page 5. Nutrition services gone up, looks like 19%. I'm just guessing if that's food cost increases, or what is that related to?
I think that's also wages. Yeah, wages. That particular population of our employee group was vastly underpaid. There were times where we had to send people home because they weren't even meeting like minimum. Like we have to follow federal minimum wage, I think, guidelines because it's a federal program, and we weren't hitting the mark, so we had to have someone go home a half hour early or something because the wage that we were paying wasn't enough to meet the standard. So that is largely wages in that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess articles, that doesn't, Article 1 through 11 doesn't tell me anything other than,
No,
doesn't tell me. So maybe next year in the budget, you could at least say what each article represents.
Yeah,
Is that hard to do? Or not?
Absolutely, and yes, Dawn's taking notes over here. I'm sure she could list them all off for you right now, and
Not
right,
but
we won't.
maybe
Yep.
future we could,
But
we would know what Article
list,
1 is.
have a
Article,
descriptor next to it.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
very small, just something like you had down below a
Yep,
little bit.
for sure. And the other thing I'll just say is those net differences, the big increases are largely because there's salaries in those lines, like the 12.9, the 11.7, 13.1. Those are going to be because there's salaries paid out of those articles. And a lot of the negatives with, those are items that we either had to, it doesn't mean we cut something, but it just might have been moved to another article or something. And that's where we always caution people, don't try to read too much into that, but ask a question if you have a question and we can unpack it for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great point.
I'm kind of warmed up to Article 3 and Article 9, I guess. 0 and minus 11.
Right, 3
Those
is
are my type of articles.
career and technical education. Okay, so I can explain 3 though, and this might be helpful.
Okay.
We put a placeholder in there, but right now, so that's $10,000 just in case, like there's some expense that comes up, but that's largely been taking over the state. So that's for our vocational programming, and the state pays the voc schools directly. So it used to be a pass-through model where we would pay, and then the state would reimburse us, and it was a whole thing. But now the states pay the voc schools directly for our enrollments to those schools. So we just use that as a placeholder to not zero it out.
Now, do you have any, I don't want to refer to what I normally do, but rainy day fund setting somewhere with 600,000 or 700,000 in it? or-
There are two things that, I wouldn't say they're rainy day funds, but we have the capital reserve accounts for two areas that when money is not expended in those articles, it is put, because voters, the board designated and voters approved it to go for those expenses, so technology is one.
Right.
Though that money, instead of just being rolled into the fund balance, gets rolled into a special like capital reserve for technology. That is, I think, up over $1 million,
Whoa.
which sounds like a lot, and I get that. But I will also say that if 3 switches go in our network, that could be gone, half of that could be gone to replace those switches. So one of the things, one of our board members, Kelly Heath from Hollis, has been very cognizant of that particular fund. And so one of the things we're doing is looking to spend that down, because I just want to say, remember, you have a second-year superintendent and a first-year business manager who are now looking at things a little bit differently. And one of the things that we have talked about is how do we use those funds to make sure that they're kept at a safe level, right, but not getting too excessive. The other one that's similar is that I had mentioned it as a facilities capital reserve. So facilities funds that didn't get expended go into a capital reserve. The board has to approve expenditures out of those too. Once they go into those capital reserves, in order for us to spend them, the board has to approve it. So that was what I was talking about with if we have a boiler go or a roof blow off, then that's where we would go to probably pull money from. That one has gotten up to about $2 million. But that will go pretty quick because a roof on the middle school is going to be $1 million, right, potentially. So
But don't you add the roof in the middle school into your plan here every year?
not replacement of it. We have maintenance. Yes, there is some level of maintenance. You're right.
I would just like to see you do a cap. We're looking at that in the town here, doing cap on a few things. And it would be nice to know you're capping it at $1 million or $2 million, and not keep going.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and that's really the discussions we're having with the managers of those departments to look at how they can be responsibly spending that down to a point that keeps us in a safe zone, but still allows us to draw some of those funds down without adding more to the budget. So that's one of the strategies we're using this year with facilities. Normally facilities gets an additional amount beyond their operating budget to do some extra things. This year the direction is use that capital reserve account so we're not putting more on the taxpayer. So that's exactly what we're doing. The other thing is we have a fund balance, which is the money that's not spent in the previous year. We took a lot of, there was a lot of discussion about this last year at Budget Advisory where people felt that we were being irresponsible. But the thing I'll just say, and I think municipal budgets are like this too, it's not like a home budget where you can take a loan or put it on a credit card. Like we have to be able to pay our bills, and in a district our size, our salaries alone for a month is a pretty significant amount of money. So let's say there was some shortfall or some reason that our revenues didn't come in, we can't have no money in backup to not pay people, right? So trying to find that line is kind of a delicate balance, and it did get high because of COVID reimbursements and delays in money coming in and going out, and that's something Dawn has looked long and hard about, is how much of that fund balance can we use and still try to push it out as far as we can, so.
I will add for the council as a process piece that these articles are voted on by the public one at a time. So they review each article and, essentially advise to spend that or to put that into the budget for the process.
I think the last time we went to a school board meeting with the town council and our town manager, they would only allow us to speak for 3 minutes. And our town manager was trying to speak, Gordy Billington, and they had the 3 minute, and they told him he couldn't speak anymore. So I said, well, I'll give him my 3 minutes, and they wouldn't let him do it. They told him to sit down. This was the town manager, Standish.
Yep.
And I think that's the last time that I ever went to a meeting, and most councilors in that era ever went to a meeting. And so that was way before your time.
Right.
And way before, but they didn't want to hear what we had to say at the meeting, and it was basically, we ended up all walking out because we had 3 minutes is not enough,
Well, I think Tasha and I can work on changing that climate, because I think something John and I have been committed to is to break down some of those barriers that have existed and things that have gone on in the past. They have nothing to do with us, right? We have no horse in that race, so how do we start over? And I know Dawn has been taking notes tonight about some of the points you've made, and it's fair. We get, like all of you get going in your day-to-day, and then you're like, oh yeah, the meeting's tonight, and we could have sent this earlier, and that's something we can do in the future, right? That's a great point. That communication ahead of time or throughout the process is something we can improve next time, absolutely.
Well, just keep your feet to the fire for next year, because you won't be able to say, I'm new at this, because you'll already.
I know. And she can't say she's new anymore either. She'll be
That's right.
an old pro after 1 year.
Well, new is good.
Yeah,
New broom sweeps clean, right?
sometimes.
Any other questions? I think we're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions from the public? Do we usually have the public?
If anybody wanted to.
Workshop
this
is
is done.
the discretion of the chair.
Okay. I see somebody, come on down.
Creek. Been doing yard work all day. Zap. Izzy Higgins, 215 Bonnie Eagle Road. As a senior citizen on a fixed income, I've been on the BAC for a few years now. And I was appointed when I was on the council. And I think that is something, you know, just as a liaison, I think that is something that should be considered for the future. Because I've been here myself at least 3 different meetings where I've gotten up to say, and by the way, the Budget Advisory Committee needs representation. Come on down. What year were you on the school board?
I was on.
Because I would think, I guess I'm surprised that you don't understand the process.
I was on.
Better.
I was on about 6 months, and they were hiring a new superintendent, and they decided to do it internally. And there was a lot of stuff that no one knew was going on, and I decided to walk away because I didn't want to be involved with that situation. So I resigned after 6 months. And hats off, they did a great job, but this was a deal where it was going wrong, and I didn't want to be involved in
Well, we need more council and municipal participation in the process, because it isn't like doing a household budget. It isn't like doing a business budget. It has to be done on a time frame to be presented in a timely manner to all the towns and then to all the voters, because you do get a chance to come and vote on this. But we have to do this before we even know exactly how much money we're getting from the state. So a lot of it is like using last year's budget. And we would love to have more people from the, townspeople at home, from the council, to come and be part of the process, because it's a real eye-opener. I didn't understand it when I started, and it's different than anything you've done. You understand, I think, as counselors, that you have similar constraints, but you're not, this is really dependent so much on what comes down from the state, including unfunded mandates from time to time. So we need more people, more eyes, more ears to help the process. Thank you.
John Sargent, School Board from Standish, representative. I've been on this council before. I was on finance for many years. When I was on finance, I transitioned to working at the BAC to find out how the school budget went, and so I could keep Gordy informed on the budget and what we were doing for numbers. When I got off the council, I took a break for a year, and then I went back and I'm on the school board. Being a member of the BAC is time-consuming. There's a lot of numbers there, but it's really worthwhile. And I wanted to impress upon you that when they voted for it, although there were 30-some people on the BAC initially, and I don't know how many voted at the end, but it was unanimous for this budget, and they went all through different scenarios of what it would cost, what the impact would be. Then it comes to the finance and facilities, which is what I am chair of at the school board. And here again, after much discussion, this was unanimous. This is the best we feel we can do for this budget, taking into consideration our biggest resource, which is our human resource, our teachers. And we started a year ago when I was vice chair on negotiations, along with being chair on finance. is to see them both together and realizing if we give this union some money, how is it going to snowball up? And it has. And now we're on the second year of it. But we've had teachers and teacher aides, ed techs come up to us and say, thank you very much, recognizing their worth as people, as teachers, as educators, as professionals. So we don't take this budget lightly when we send it to you, but I would recommend, like Sarah was on it before, designating somebody from your finance committee, like when I was serving, to be your representative to the BAC, and have an alternate, so if that person can't make it that week, the other person can go. It's very simple. It's a couple hours, and actually, our BAC meetings last, what, an hour and a half? An hour and a half. We've cut it down, and I didn't go this year because Don Moran was the vice chair of Finance and Facilities, and I've been ill, and he attended all those except for two, which I did. So just want to let you know this was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I think we're moving on to the ordinance committee planner presentation, discussion of potential changes to the provisions of section 181-23 elderly housing.
You guys want to present something?
Hello and good evening. My name is Jeff Amos. I'm an engineer with Teradyne Consultants, and I'm here with Brian Levitt, resident of town here. We are looking to get the elderly housing use from the ordinance to be allowed within the rural zone. We're also looking, we had meetings with staff to have other improvements as we see that to the elderly housing ordinances, which it looks like Scott's working with the committee directly with those. So as an engineer, president, and founder of Teradyne Consultants, we've been in business for 20 years. I work all over the state. Our engineers work all over the state. We meet with lots of people on lots of types of developments, and really have firsthand access to what people want, what they're looking to build, what's desirable. I have designed several 55 and older communities in the state, as well as a few large developments in Florida early in my career. So I have a pretty good handle on what the market is looking for. And we heard it before from the previous presentation, actually. Maine is an aging state. Folks are getting older. Their children have left home. They would love a place to downsize that's more affordable, but there's just nothing out there that's reasonable. In our opinion, most of the towns in the area are not approaching this in the correct way. Similar to Standish, they have caps for the amount of units that are allowed within any given park. They require them to be in multi-family 4-unit or larger buildings. But if you think about what's at the core of a successful park, it's a community, okay? And what goes into a community? You need to have a critical mass of people in the different age ranges to be able to support a wide variety of amenities, like real amenities, clubhouses, pools, playing courts, those kind of things, as well as a wide variety of clubs. If you think about 55, the word elderly housing is a strange one. For 55 and older, 55 to 70 are working people at the end of their careers, and then obviously, and they have very little in common with those that are 80 to 85 years old. Those groups don't do a lot together in parks. They don't mix. So you need to have, when I talk about critical mass, you have to have a critical mass of both age ranges, a variety of age ranges. So there's stuff and people, to form a community for the entire breadth of ages that are within the park. And so obviously the biggest issue that we see is that you need to have a large number of folks in order to have to support the amenities that are more expensive in order to keep the homes affordable, in order to have a wide variety, a big breadth of programs, clubs, playing courts, walking trails, everything that if you imagine as a rural Mainer, most of us are, if you think about what you would want your retirement to be like, most of us probably wouldn't imagine that we're living in a community of 24 people in an 8-unit building somewhere. We would imagine that we have our own space, smaller property, smaller home, but in a perfect world, surrounded by friends and family, even, and have people to do things with, places to go, things to do, things to keep active. And so that's really what we're looking to get with this. Obviously, the rural zone, that's this use potentially is a big density difference from what normally we supported in the rural zone. But once again, I'm involved in local planning committees and seeing towns across the way. And a lot of times people, they propose changes to the comprehensive plan that then flows into zoning, and they want to see these things. They want to see these parks. But it's certainly worth noting that Mr. Levitt over there has both the interest in a large property and the desire to create what he imagines, and certainly what I envision as a top quality development, one that has a couple hundred acres, that has waterfront access to Little Watchick Pond, that would support a large clubhouse, a variety of playing courts, walking trails, any number of clubs that you can imagine. If you had the right number of folks in there, you could support all of these things, and whatever you can imagine and whatever you want to do could be supported by the folks in that community. So I guess, in general, that's what we're asking for. It really comes down to community and what the people of Standish would want to have for their own community. So with that said, Brian, if you have anything more to add.
Just a couple things. That was good, Jeff. One thing unique about this parcel of property that we're talking about up off Boundary Road that does abut Little Watchick is that the public water comes down Boundary Road. And with Jeff speaking about critical mass of people, the majority, the major component to getting the water upgrade is having more people involved, giving more money to upgrade the system, the pump system, which we talked about through the wildlands. The district has given us different guidelines of, the more people, X amount donation for the upgrade, X amount, more people, a bigger upgrade, which doesn't only help this project, but it helps Steep Falls and that whole end, because as you guys know, it comes from a private well in Steep Falls, not public water from Sebago Lake. So it helps a lot of people, not just this project. So, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot since, and being 55 now, I never thought myself as elderly, but I guess we're here, so it kind of sneaks up on you. But thinking about, I was fortunate enough to work with Jim Cummings at Gardenside in Standish. For me personally, I need a little bit more elbow room, and to have an opportunity to live out maybe with some walking trails and some other amenities would be good for what I would want. Now, not everybody's like that. Some people like to live in town where they're close to everything, and that's great. We all need our spot, but Standish is very limited on their elderly housing at the moment, and I feel as though this project would be good for the town. So, any questions for me.
Well, I would say first that I think my understanding is the industry is sort of adjusting to say older adults as opposed to elderly, if that makes you feel any better.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So I've just noticed that in my day-to-day, that it's now older adults is the terms that we want to use.
Good.
So I think just to understand a little bit better, you were talking specifically about a property that abuts Little Watchstick.
That's correct.
And there's public water from a public well in Steep Falls that comes
right.
down. What would be the wastewater plan and sewage?
Individual septic systems. Yep. It's, in this parcel, I think, Jeff, is it about 300 acres total?
Yeah, so on this parcel, I'm not sure how you want to get detailed into this one piece, but we're talking about a zoning change, but.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, this parcel, it's hard to separate the two of them. This parcel already supports what could be a 50-lot subdivision kind of thing. And so with a water line, certainly that really makes it a lot easier to fit septic systems in there. So in the rural zone, in any town that doesn't have public sewer and public water, there are natural controls to how many units can be supported by the property. You know, you have stormwater, you're in a lake watershed that has phosphorus control, stormwater controls, buffers, those types of things. But, you have also minimum size septic systems and setbacks from units and other septic systems and from wetlands and those things. And so, obviously, this thing would have to be designed kind of around responsible septic system locations. Ideally what you'd want is little pockets of little neighborhood kind of sections and then on to the next one. So you have a little pod of people and then down the street some more. So it's not, the idea isn't that you have a subdivision street with 2-acre lots with homes going in there, that you have a walkable development with sidewalks and walking trails, curb streets, snow plow removal, the whole thing, and in a density that would create a walkable neighborhood.
No, thank you. I do realize it was a little in the weeds. I think what I was getting at was a concern of opening up beyond 48 units and, what is the impact going to be? Where is that going to go? Because I think, I'm sure the folks at Watchstick Lake don't want it contaminating.
No. So, and the positive of a 55 and older park, a couple things, obviously. One, no impact to the school system. But for septic systems in particular, you're talking about 1 or 2 bedroom homes. And so those systems, a typical residential house, you think about, that's a 3 or 4 bedroom design. You're talking about half of that size for these smaller homes. So you can actually combine several systems together and create one that would be still, under 1,000 gallons per day and not require any kind of special larger setbacks from water sources and foundations and those kind of things. The density that we would imagine would be, let's pretend that we go forward and the density that's allowed in the residential zone, 1 per 20,000, is applied to this project. There's so much space on this property that it would not be a problem to space these things, way around.
How many acres are we?
300.
Thank you.
Scott, for the people at home, you gave the council a great summary. Could you just come to the podium and just give a little, summary of this and why, it's not currently allowed, and so that's what you're just hearing tonight is?
Yeah, most of what's in here is what they've just said. It's their ask. What the ordinance committee had asked this workshop to convene for this is specifically on that rural zone question. The question on the cap on the units and allowing a little more diversity of housing seemed something that was more straightforward, more clear, made a lot of sense to the ordinance committee. So we're moving forward on language to bring to the full council on those points. The question here is primarily on that distinction on where these types of developments are allowed. And to give a little background on that, when we talk about elderly housing, it's a defined type of development in our ordinance. You can have an age, I have to use elderly housing because it's what's in the ordinance. And because you can have age-restricted older adult housing anywhere in town that you may want it, as long as you're following the density requirements of the zones in town. We don't say you can't age-restrict your housing. but this particular provision allows for much higher densities. And the question is, do we want to allow those higher densities in what is now the rural zone in town? So that's the basic ask that we're here to test the waters on with the council tonight. And then just because part of the fun of ordinances is looking for unintended consequences and the further things that might interact with small change, what seem to be small changes like that, is that currently our elderly housing use is exempt from our growth ordinance. So we only allow so many dwelling units to be built depending on what part of town you're in. And the rural zone is very heavily restricted on how many building permits per year can be given out. I think it's something like 20 a year, with only 5 per year being in any given subdivision. And that gets very restrictive, and is part of why we haven't seen a lot of subdivisions in the rural zone in the last 10 years. And elderly housing as a defined use, if you're meeting all the provisions required to do that, to get that increased density, is exempt from that ordinance. So I think something that the council should consider in reviewing this is there's a lot of good here, but there's potential other impacts to the ordinance. And if we're allowing this on any property, then anyone who may consider a subdivision, get told no, or get told they can do it, but they can only sell off 5 lots a year, may decide, well, let's start looking at the ordinance for ways to get around that, and may find one in this change. And that's really the only big red flag that we have to wrestle with here. I think after that, it's what do we see as appropriate, and where do we want to work on it.
Can you talk about why we have, or the reasons behind we might limit the number of new houses per subdivision to a certain number a year?
I think the growth ordinance is pretty closely tied to our current comprehensive plan that was passed in, I think, 2006. And so the form-based code zones, which cover Sebago Lake Village and Standish Corner here, are also exempt, so any development can go there, and those are some of our identified growth areas where our comprehensive plan says we want to see that development, trying to cluster it in certain areas. There's a variety of reasons for that. It helps cut down on services in terms of new roads and distance for emergency response, distance for school buses, and cuts down on environmental impacts to some extent, or at least clusters them. And at least those areas that I mentioned are areas served by public water. Steep Falls is another growth area that is also served by public water. The line out, that system is fairly limited in its current form. I think they mentioned that part of getting it to serve another development would be putting money in toward upgrading the pumps for that section, because it is separate from the rest of Portland Water District's water lines. And so there's some question on how much that would cost and how much capacity could be created. But there's also a fourth growth area way out toward Wyndham, but it hasn't really been acted on, so the zoning doesn't match there.
And so I understand the ask is to remove the 48-unit cap.
There's those 2 points there in the memo, the 48-unit cap and allowing the density of housing. That one, the ordinance committee is already working on that language.
Okay.
That's sort of what we're really interested in here tonight is the rural zone element seemed like a larger, something that more than the ordinance committee should weigh in on. And so we wanted to bring that to the workshop. If you have any thoughts on that, I'm happy to hear them, but just know that that's something we are already working on.
Well, thank you for that, because I think just removing that, I hope there's some specificity there as far as just then, now there's no cap, and then we don't, have really much direction from there. I think it
would still be limited on the land area per unit requirements that we already have.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that.
Seeing I'm the only one from the ordinance committee here. Our biggest gripe, or concern, not gripe, is the fact that this is going to be possibly on the rural versus residential, is controlling sprawl, extra impact on fire EMS potentially, because this elderly might just by nature be using that more, having that further outside of town. And the biggest thing is controlling sprawl, and, other developers seeing that, hey, I can't get the subdivision in, but I'll just make it, 55 and older now. And then we have this exploding 55 and older housing growing in the rural zoning. That was our biggest concern. Everything else is pretty straightforward, yeah. Have better communities, more housing, single families, duplexes rather than the, four families and things like that. That was all pretty easy for us to just say, yeah, it's thumbs up, but the rural versus residential was a big, hard thing to discuss.
Yeah, I have concerns because a lot of people over the years in Standish have bought homes in the rural district because they want the extra land and to move around on. They don't want to be clustered in a village. And now what we're doing is everything that we've promised them as a planners and town councilors, that we were going to keep it forever rural, and now we're just opening up. And I don't like the idea that we're moving a lot off the 48 number. That's some things that, like I said, this is the first I've heard of it. I'm not on the ordinance committee, but I know that we have a quality of life in the rural zone different than the village center zones. And I just want to make sure we're not going to impact people that have been bought houses and enjoy that quality of life out there.
Just want to follow up, I'm pretty far away from the 55 range currently. I know that comes quick because I've gotten way too old, way too fast. So, personally, I would love to be 55 and older and live in the rural zone. So that is, I'm like torn. Do we want to, control sprawl and all that? But, personally, I would love to go out and live out near Watchuk Lake or Little Watchuk Lake or Pond when I'm that age, and just having to, so it cuts both ways, but it's, I don't think
And I think we got to be
get back to the rural
just
zone.
so that people don't call the town hall 45 times in the morning. We're not talking Watchuk Lake, we're talking Watchuk Pond.
Yes.
Little Watchuk Pond off from Middle Road, right? So, I mean, I don't want anybody to think that we're talking Watchuk Lake, because a lot of people in town don't even know that Little Watchuk Pond exists, except for partying hard when you're graduating seniors, But I don't know, like I said, I have some concerns that people bought properties out there and we told them what they were getting into, and now we're opening it up a lot more, and I just don't want to get into a can of worms. And like you said, everybody that couldn't get approved for the 5-lot would go there. And I'm assuming this isn't affordable housing. This is going to be with sidewalks and trails, and it's going to be a high-end. So we're not talking about any affordable housing for seniors. We're talking about a higher-end properties in that area. So I'm all set.
I guess my thing is, yeah, this is a pretty big change for a large area. I understand the proposal you brought forward. I don't know, it was a year ago. I came to a workshop, had the plan. I thought it was, looked good. I think it was, I would be happy to see that go in. I think we need communities. What we're doing right now is we're spreading a lot all over the place. My concern is making a blanket change on this for all rural areas, if I said that correctly. And the other thought is, with the comprehensive plan that hasn't been changed in 20 years, we are in the process of going through that now. What I would almost like to see is part of that process is a change of redistricting and reallocating, okay, where do we want to see growth? Where's the best place to have all of these things? My expectation is that what comes out of that is an idea of where we want the growth as a town to be and how we want that to happen. I would be more, I guess, in my eyes, what I would like to see is if you want to make your development happen, I'm not going to think of the right, a variance to allow that to occur, and wait until after the comprehensive plan comes back and look at what they've allocated, what they've talked about for growth areas and stuff like that, and then maybe reconsider changing maybe or maybe not the rural part, but waiting to see what comes back from the comprehensive plan, because my expectation is on the sheet today that we have, that pink is gonna get smaller, because it's not rural in a lot of those areas today, and we do want to have, focus some growth in those things, so I would expect that there would be changes there.
I appreciate hearing all this a lot, because for one thing, Ben, we've been working on this for 3 years now, and we've gone nowhere. We've kind of chased our tail in a circle. So it helps getting some feedback from you guys on, what does the town want? Should we move forward with this? It doesn't sound like we should exactly the way this project is presented right now. One aspect that you just mentioned was, maybe we should present our original project and do the contract zone part of it, and do, a regular subdivision with, I think, yeah, like 120 units, which across the street is bigger than that anyway, but I'd really like to see something to do with that elderly, older people housing, to some extent. I mean, we don't need 600 homes in there to make this work, but there's nothing out there for people. And when we talk about affordability, I mean, this isn't a $600,000 home for people. It's less than that, and we don't even know a number, because we don't know what's involved in getting the water there yet and the amenities. But I think if the council members, and I know a couple of you have seen what we had designed before, I'd like to think that you guys would see some excitement in it like I see it. And but I don't want to drag this out. I don't want to be here a year from now talking about the same thing, chasing my tail. If you guys don't think it's going to work, then let's just stop and we'll do a regular subdivision that meets everything for criteria for the town, and we'll go about it that way. That's not out of the question. I was just hoping to do something a little bit different, out of the normal a little bit.
Just because I've missed or have not necessarily been a part of a lot of this. So the plan that you presented a while ago, has that morphed or changed into something different in your ideas since that time?
Can't remember what you saw, to be honest.
It was like a total of 180 units. There was like 120 for the older adults. Yep. And then there was a mix of single-family homes in there.
That's right.
8 stages, I believe, and you
That's
talked
correct.
about. Is that what you're currently talking about or currently looking to progress forward with? Or is it changed?
I was trying to get a feel from you people, if you felt we should do more of the elderly, or all elderly, if you would call it that, or do the contract zone and just stick to what we originally had talked about, or go back to just the residential neighborhood with the house lots like across the street. It's just some direction, that's all.
I would really lean myself towards contract zone, because I don't think I would want to open up the whole rural zone to every developer.
Well, that helps that.
In the state of Maine, or anybody that wanted to show up here now could buy stuff.
Yeah.
The whole planning process, I would really lean, if this is a process that you think it's going to work in that area and it's going to be a benefit to the town, then, I would lean towards more of where he's been on this for 3 years. But I think we need to give him some direction soon, because it looks like you could put a good project in there. I've seen your developments, you do a good job, and.
Slow but steady, Phil.
And, yeah.
Slow but steady.
And I do know, obviously, as you get into the elderly, it is gonna wear out our rescues and fires. More and more of that comes into play with, and we're already up to our elbows and trying to sort that out in the town right now, but, I just think
Sounds of it, we've still got some work to do with the school committee stuff.
To make yours work, I don't want to open it up to everybody else. So every piece of land with 30 acres in the rural zone now can get sidestepped in through the planning process. That's all I'm saying.
That's not what we're after.
That's
either.
what you're not after, yeah.
So maybe the contract zone is the best route to take, and it limits the project to one time without opening up to every person. And I'd really like a good feeling from you guys before we invest another year or two in the time with Jeff and whatnot. you know, maybe it's not tonight, but in the next meeting or so, maybe we could bring back our plan that we've put together and show you guys what that is, and maybe you'd feel better about it, or stop us dead in the tracks and say, that's crazy, Brian, you're an idiot.
It doesn't have to go through some planning stages before it would come to the council to author. I think we'd have to go through some type of,
So usually how we do the contract zone is we have them come to the council first
okay,
to get the initial, so a contract zone has to go through the ordinance like a zoning change, so it's that 3-vote process. So the way we do it is it comes in for that initial introduction to get the council's vote to say, yes, we can see this going forward. Then it goes to the planning board to get the planning board subdivision site plan approval, whatever it may need in that range. And then it all gets wrapped up with a bow and comes back to council for the final vote
council would, yeah, I
to
guess
approve.
that's where I was.
The project's been approved, and now the zoning gets approved, and it's all weaves back together nicely, hopefully.
Yeah, you got me figured out now. I'm good.
It's a process, for sure.
Did you have another question?
No, I was just gonna say, you know, I think the conversation through contract zoning was perfect. You know, it doesn't open up for anybody to just do whatever they want in the rural zone. I know you do a lot in town, you know, and it would just focus on one project. I think that might be the best way to go for everybody.
I mean, I think tonight you guys get the general consensus of what we're trying to do, so, you know, if you say you guys should go ahead with something and move forward to the next level, then we'd be happy to do that. Want to do it, you know, I'm excited.
We can't vote tonight at all. All we can do is throw a suggestion how we might feel, but as far as getting any type of hands up in the air, that, we can't do that at a
How does that play out? I mean, what
We
happens?
just put you on an agenda.
An agenda.
Yeah, I'm curious, so when you brought this forward, whatever, 2 years ago, did you want a contract zone then, or what was the ask? So yes, a contract zone, and it was turned down then for?
Nothing's been turned down, but this is as far as we've made it.
So what, not to be rude, but like, what's been going on for 2 years? Why is it taking so long?
So, my company was involved in the previous contract zone that went through the town, and that was for a solar development. And so as part of that process, I believe some of the regulations for contract zone were kind of laid out. And that process was a gravel road crossing a stream, and that was the end of the plans. This project is, you know, a mile of roadway, 6 stormwater ponds, water line, you know, so in order, and the regulation, the ordinance requires that we have nearly full plans to get to the point where we can get to where staff will support it, at least to go for the planning board and start the process officially. So, you know, there was, you know, 6 or 8 months or a year of natural resources, wetlands, topographic surveys, boundary surveys, all this stuff. And then months of roadway design, rough stormwater design. Brian has a tremendous bill as a result of this process, just in order to get before and say, yeah, I think that's a good idea, or no way, you know, so that's why it's taking this long.
I just want to defend the town. I've been on the council 10 months, and this is the first I've heard of it. So I don't want anybody to think that we're spinning our wheels.
No. Yeah.
Nothing's been come forward, and like our manager said, in 2 years, why have you, I don't know if you've been before the council in the past, or been to the planning board at all?
So just to clarify, you know, we're certainly not attacking the council or anyone in the staff.
I'm not saying you are, but
Yeah, it's just
about a 2-year period.
the process of getting existing conditions information that's reliable, and then designing things, and then having a back and forth with the town attorney, and you know, and certainly you know, some of the early contract zone actual documents that we provided weren't up to snuff. So there's certainly been a back and forth, and that's as much, you know, if you want to assign blame, it's as much our fault as anybody else's, or Brian's team.
Yeah, I would say it's more your fault, because
Yeah.
did you just say you'd been here before for contract, you've been talking about contract zoning? I thought you said you hadn't been.
He went to a workshop, yeah,
For a different project.
for a different project.
Different project, okay, but not this one. Okay.
Well,
No,
Brian was
no,
here for a couple of years
there's-
ago
It's
for.
confusing, but anyways,
Yes, thank you.
it's late and I don't know
So-
what time it is. Where's my clock over in the corner here?
It's 7:30,
All
so
right.
we need new batteries.
They came in for a workshop meeting much like this with the contract zone plan that they had for the contract zone.
For a different project.
The same, well, for the mixed project that was mentioned with a single-family, non-age restricted section and a number of duplexes that were going to be age restricted. And they came in, they said to the council, is this something that you'd be willing to entertain in a contract zone? The council gave them the vague nods that you get at a workshop. And they went to the drawing board to start getting together the materials they need to come forward with a full application. And that's been the process then. It's been all the work that Jeff just said that they've been doing, and then going to the town, talking to myself, to Zach, to John Cross, to JP, to the fire chief about all the different aspects of this and what issues the town might have with it to make sure this is gonna work. So when we have it all, the idea is that the technical side, that the legal side is buttoned up when we come to the council, so you have an actionable application.
So you think it's been moving along?
It's been moving,
fairly-
just
It sounded
not
like it
in
was
front of
was
the
just
council.
something happened 2 years ago and
No,
and no one's done.
this has been a
and-
back
see,
and forth
now
for some
we're getting a
time,
little more
and
process. So it's been a
it's been
process, so no
going
one's
back and
really dragging their
forth
feet.
long enough that there was some frustration on, I think, of both sides that said, well, what else can we do if this contract zone is proving this difficult? And that's where the elderly housing changes came forth as well, here's a project slightly scaled back that we could do with a simple ordinance change if the council is open to a simple ordinance change. So we've brought that forward. It sounds like that's not gonna work either. So we're going back to trying to button up the contract zone.
Because I think you've answered my question, is you decide you want to go contract because the conventionally wasn't going to work. That's what will happen if we open this up. Everybody would go to what you want to do with the elderly
It was
housing,
part of the
whatever.
project from the beginning.
So anyways, I think we have to probably look at more
Yeah.
contract zoning and not opening up the Holy Royal District.
That's
That would be
certainly
my opinion.
what I'm getting from the council is that we'd go back to that
Okay,
process.
that's good.
I think a lot of the project that you're talking about that isn't seen, you know, just for instance, a meeting with the water district to get Roger Mosley and 2 or 3 other people, Zach came, and, you know, that takes 3 months to organize and set the time up and go do it. And then the attorneys kicked our stuff back, I don't even know, a few times, and so we've had to do more work. So now what we've got is almost a complete set of drawings for a subdivision with, you know, lacking the stormwater ponds and stuff, but we've done all the wetlands, we've done a lot of work on this project. So when if we get to planning, that part, a lot of this will be done, so.
Well, I
For
think
something.
we'd have to see full plans if it come here, right? I mean, we would really have to see what was going on and what was
Yeah,
going
we're working on it.
Okay.
That's what's taking the time.
I mean,
It's-
that's the thing, I'm not on the planning board, so I don't know what the timeline is or whatever. All right, I'm good, thank you.
Any more comments, questions?
No, I would agree with Phil on this. I think that we should look at the contract zoning and move forward that way.
That's the, cool, perfect. Thank you. There was one other thing I was gonna mention real quick. The town offices are closed on election day. I was told to mention that. Really? So, yes, because they're gonna be we're gonna have the election here. Please come and vote. There's some important things. Get out and vote. There's lots of ways you can vote, early or absentee ballot or anything like that, but the town offices will be closed that day for the election. And I don't know what day that is. June something.
11th.
June 11th.
11th, maybe?
June 11th.
I don't know, I'm guessing.
Yeah, make a plug.
This came up.
Might have to change that because I'm gonna be on vacation till June 12th, so we're probably gonna have to change it till the following week.
Probably
What do you
not.
think about that?
Probably not.
Just a quick, you'd mentioned earlier in the process that where we put growth and everything is governed by the comprehensive plan. That process, that committee's first meeting is tomorrow night, and that process, so I'm hoping everybody watching this and everything is gonna be keeping an eye on that process, because that is exactly what it's for, is figuring out
what do we want to be as a town, and where in town wants to be different things, what kind of densities we want here, there, and all of that is exactly what we're going to be looking at in that process.
So that's tomorrow here
Tomorrow
in this
here.
room?
I believe so.
Yes,
perfect.
Good point, thank you.
And just to add on to that, Zach showed me last week the website that's gone up for the comprehensive plan as well. So you can toggle onto that through the Standish website, and it's a very nice website, so I think they've done a nice job.
And that's 6 o'clock tomorrow. So if you have the time, please come. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Sure, I gotta hit the
We do need a